Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Dan, the voice behind ThatKaitoDan, and welcome to my review for RWBY Volume 6, Chapter 3, The Lost Fable. First off though, sorry this review was a day late. I was sadly too sick to be able to finish this review in time for yesterday, but I am here now, and I'm ready to share my thoughts with you guys. As ever, before we start though, please do watch the episode first through the official sources on roosterteeth.com to support the show and to avoid spoilers, cause trust me, there's a lot to talk about with this episode. And as always, it's now time to start off with the viewer comment section, where I share some of your thoughts from the last review. So, let's get started with AC Gears and Arms first, who points out the very cool touch that Jin separating the heroes away from each other is a great way for those involved to get an unbiased take on Ozma's secrets. Good catch there, man. Brandon Thompson also left a comment giving praise for how well the volume has done so far in making RWBY feel like a main character once again, following her character's recent missteps as a driving force in the story. And Dawnlight16 found some fun in Crow's reaction to the naked Genie of the Lamp. Don't forget to leave your thoughts about episode 3 in the comments down below, and tune in next time to see if they get featured in the next chapter review. So after the exciting cliffhanger that the last episode left us on, with the promise of some long awaited answers to many of our questions, it's safe to say that the hype levels were on a maximum high heading into this next entry, especially as it was going to be the longest RWBY episode to date, not counting the finales with their extra long credits. Of course, it's all well and good getting a lore bomb, but was the episode itself worth the anticipation, or did it fail to live up to it? Let's find out. As Jin begins to narrate our look into what Ozma's been keeping a secret from his allies, who over the course of the episode are shown watching on like ghosts, we're properly introduced to a less pale and grim looking Salem, a young woman that was once trapped in a castle tower by orders of her father. And despite being able to use magic like all humans could during this age, she's unable to leave until someone rescues her. In comes our brave hero, ready to fight the dangers within. Ozpin, or as he's known during this time, Ozma. For those of you who have seen my Oscar Semblance Theory video, you may already be aware of this name's origins, but for those of you who don't know, Ozma is likely a reference to Princess Ozma, the true ruler of the land of Oz that was turned into a boy named Tip and hidden away on a witch's farm by the Wizard of Oz so he could rule the land instead. While this doesn't quite sink my theory, since Tip could now be Oscar's illusion instead of Princess Ozma, it does make things a little interesting. Especially since Ozma is also voiced by Oscar's voice actor, Aaron Dismuke. So that's a pretty neat possible connection to make there between the hero and the farm boy. Ozma is here to rescue Salem, not because he wishes to marry her or for some other kind of reward. He's actually just a legendary hero with a pure, honest heart who wishes to do good deeds because it's morally right. Sounds like a certain scythe wielder, huh? And he does indeed manage to save Salem in escaping the castle's dangers, and the pair quickly end up falling for each other. It's a tale as old as time, and I love that in this world full of characters that are based on fables, the origins of RWBY's major conflict started off at first with the most well-known of classic fairy tale premises. It feels like a fitting addition to the narrative, but with its own spin on things. That being that this tale does not have a happy ending. Ozma soon becomes deathly ill, and he passes away not long after, leaving a heartbroken Salem to mourn his death. Heard that the one that she loved so deeply would die in such a tragic way like this after all he did, she asked why the gods of this world, the God Brothers of Light and Dark, would allow this injustice to happen. So she sets out to the Domain of Light, an absolutely gorgeous location with its flourishing fields and bright colors. It's easily my favorite new setting in this entire episode. Here lies the God of Light, who appears before the grieving Salem as a giant, featureless, glowing being with stag horns on his head, and he is voiced by Chase McCaskill, who you may have heard in Sword Art Online Abridged as Schmidt, as well as from his YouTube channel Chaseface. Salem is here to beg the god to bring Ozma back to life, but while the deity does understand her pain, he chooses not to, as it claims it would upset the delicate balance of life and death, a decision that Salem calls unfair, though honestly I can see fair enough points for either side of the debate. Obviously it is understandable that Salem would want her love back. Losing any loved one, especially so suddenly, is painful for anyone, and wanting to see them again is a feeling shared by many. But I'm sure that this isn't the first time that the God of Light has been asked of something like this by a human, and to bring back one life on top of being fair to all of humanity, he would have to do the same whenever asked, and that could easily turn into an ugly spiral of a mess. Thus, even with Salem's outcry, the god won't heed her demand, sending her away with advice to let the memory of Ozma rest peacefully. Sadly, Salem does not follow the god's words, and instead she opts for the aid of his brother, the God of Darkness, found in a realm that is no doubt the same dark haunting setting that we currently know Salem to reside in, especially with the pools of the nasty ooze that creates the creatures of Grimm. It's indeed because of this place being where the Grimm come from that no one has ever come to pray before the God of Darkness until now, and Salem's arrival beckons the deity to appear from the muck in a very twisted and creepy form. Also, he is voiced by Rooster Teeth, who has previously played the likes of Gel Sanes from Attack on Titan, Thor in Smite, and Marcus Kincaid from the Borderlands series. Salem once again asks a god to bring Ozma back, only this time she does not bring up meeting the elder brother before this, making it seem like the younger brother was her initial choice. And since she's the first person to willingly come to ask of his blessing, the dark god is thankful and grants her wish, bringing Ozma back to life, only for this happy reunion to turn sour very quickly, as the other brother appears. He's here to restore the balance that his brother's actions risk breaking by killing Ozma once more, which the Dark God sees as a disrespectful act of a selfish brother who refuses to allow him the opportunity to be worshipped just like him, despite both of them being able to take life and create it. And the pair's arguments eventually lead to both of them turning into the forms of two warring dragons as emotions start to rise. One little detail that I've seen mentioned in the community is that if you take a look at the shape of the dragons, they kinda look like the same dragon-like lands that we see on the map of Remnant. It could be a coincidence, but it would be a solid bet to say that this is intentional, and a rather curious sight indeed. The elder brother does manage to talk sense into his sibling though when he reveals Salem's deception that threatens to break the rules that the two agreed upon together. And even though the God of Darkness is this destructive force with a major short fuse, he does seem to respect and cherish the creations that he and his brother made. So he makes amends by finally killing Ozma for the final time in this debate. Poor Ozma. As if dying the first time wasn't bad enough, he basically got hot potatoed between two gods, all because his lover nearly turned them against each other. And on the note of Salem, she's obviously not happy that her love is once again taken from her, nearly lashing out at the gods with her magic, were it not for the light god sending her back to his domain, falling right into the lake of his shrine. But this is no ordinary dip in the pool, as she then learns that she is now cursed with immortality, unable to be with Ozma in the afterlife until the day that she comes to understand the importance of life and death. Is this a harsh punishment? I would say, yeah, it is a bit so, yeah. There are certainly other ways the gods could have gone about teaching Salem this lesson, but again, I also do see their reasoning, making Salem learn firsthand that a life without death can be more painful than a life with it. It's still a very extreme way to go about it, but I at least do get why it was done, and I hope Salem will see the error of her ways finally. But again, she does not heed to the gods' wishes. She instead tries to kill herself in spite of them, and when that fails, all that's left is anger at the gods for making her a prisoner once again and getting between her truly reuniting with Ozma. This spite and desire to defy the gods soon makes her come to the notion that if one human was capable of nearly causing the two seemingly infallible gods to fight each other, showing a weakness all because of one lonely human, perhaps she could make humanity turn against them, and as a result, it would rid her of the curse, or at least make the gods suffer until she's granted her wish. And so she goes to the many kingdoms across the land, all very well designed I might add, with some really cool looking kings and queens at the helm, and the panning camera spinning around the scene, switching between the kingdoms, all while Salem tells a story, is a brilliant shot. Salem tells them that her immortality is something that she stole from the gods, and she manages to sway the leaders with the belief that the rest of humanity can also create a world free from the pains of death should they defeat the gods, leading to a massive army ready to strike at the gods for their power. Side note, and I know this is a little nitpicky issue, but when Salem reveals herself to the gods, there's a particular ponytailed warrior seen behind Salem at one point, and then in the next shot, there's an exact duplicate standing right in front of her. Obviously, many of the crowds in RWBY are copy-pasted models, and it's not uncommon to see pairs in the same shot. But it did still distract me a little when this was so front and center on screen. Either way, the assault on the gods ends about as quickly as it begins. The humans' magic ineffective against the very beings that created and gifted them the power in the first place. And the God of Darkness especially isn't happy that his creation is used in an attempt to harm him. So, with his brother seemingly letting his retaliation go by without argument, the Dark God unleashes the magic in one massive blast that spans across the entire world, wiping humanity off the face of the earth, except for the immortal Salem. Yep, the God of Darkness basically just pulled a Thanos, though I guess with it being all but one person, I guess it would be more accurate to call it a Smash Ultimate, and Salem is Kirby. This is her new punishment, to live in the world alone for as long as it takes until she finally sees the errors of her dangerous ways. Okay, the immortality thing was harsh in its own right, though I do still get that Salem has to atone for the wrongs she's created. But this is something else, not just for making Salem the only living human being, but punishing every single human on the earth just for the actions of only a handful is kind of excessive and unfair, and it sure doesn't paint the gods as truly blameless for a lot of the actions that will follow as a result. Now this beautiful experiment, as the God of Light calls it, a world where the gods live and watch over humanity, is now deemed a failure. A remnant, if you will, of what it once was. At least that explains the planet's name. The gods soon begin to leave this world, hoping to learn from this failure. But while the God of Light departs in a shower of leaves, hoping that Salem can learn from this as well, the God of Darkness mocks Salem for still ignoring the fact that she's just as responsible, before he too exits, blasting high into the sky, far from the planet, and right through the moon, shattering it into a far more familiar state. Holy crap! I did not expect the mystery of the broken moon to be answered here, let alone as a result of this conflict between the gods and Salem. This was a mystery that we've had ever since the White trailer, and now we finally have our answer about 5 years later. And it has an even deeper purpose too, beyond just being a sign that the gods left this world, as the broken pieces soon start raining down on the planet, destroying everything all around a crying, lonely Salem. Everything is gone. Humanity, the kingdoms, the magic, the gods. All that's left in this barren world are the Grimm, the animals, and Salem, who wanders alone, blaming everyone but herself. And in her sadness, she ends up at the pools of Grimm, hoping that if the god of Light's Lake was able to make her immortal, perhaps the dark ooze that the god of darkness was residing in could destroy the curse, and finally set her free to be with Ozma. But when she dives in, the destructive power of the lake can't kill her. Instead, its corruptive might warps her into a Grimm-powered immortal, fueled by the desire to destroy, just like the Grimm themselves. Which goes as well in some way of explaining how Salem would soon be able to control the creatures themselves, because this is where she gained the power, right from their birth source. We then cut to Ozma waking up in a white void thanks to the god of light, revealing this place as somewhere between realms. The god of light updates Ozma on his home having faced a tragedy, as he calls it, at the hands of his brother. And while the siblings will soon leave the planet, he wishes to give Ozma the chance to be brought back to life for a task. He also mentions that with the gods no longer around, even though humanity will someday return to the world, perhaps as part of the world's initial cycle of creation and destruction, they will be a fraction of what they used to be. Which has to suggest that this is being the cause for no more magic in the world, but also humans are still able to have things like aura and semblances. These could be remnants, as it were, of the magic that humanity once had. He also discusses the ideals that created humanity in the first place, and reveals their relic forms. What looks to be a spear or a scepter for the relic of creation, a sword for the relic of destruction, a crown for the relic of choice, and of course the lamp for the relic of knowledge. These relics will be left behind in the world in the hope that humanity would be able to use them to remake themselves. And should all four be brought together, the gods will return to this world to judge humanity. If humanity has managed to set aside their issues and differences to live in harmony, the gods will once again live on this earth, and humanity will be just like they used to be. But if the gods find humanity irredeemable due to still fighting each other and begging for their blessings, they will be wiped out for good. This is where Ozma comes into play if he returns to life, as he will be tasked to make sure that humanity is best ready for when the judgment comes. And to be able to make sure that he's always there to be able to make a difference, he will reincarnate into another person's body and bond with their soul till the day his task is complete. So not only did we get some more clarity on what the relics look like and their use once brought all together, but we also know more now about why Osmond was cursed to be reborn like he is with Oscar. Because he has to make sure that the moment the relics come together, humanity will be deemed good enough to keep on living. This episode just keeps on giving us more and more answers, and now we finally got truly major stakes at play that makes getting the relics, or at least stopping Salem from doing so, have a lot more weight and purpose beyond just stopping the bad guy. If our heroes fail, everyone that we know and enjoy watching dies, since there's no way in this world of racism and the threat of war looming that the gods will think humanity is worth existing still. But initially, Ozma does not wish to return to life. He just wants to be with Salem, and if the world doesn't have her anymore, there's no reason to go back. Except she is still alive and on Remnant, just not in the way that he would have hoped. But even with the God of Light's warning that the Salem that he loved is no more, the prospect of seeing Salem again at all is enough for Ozma to accept the task, cutting off the god, eerily similar to when Pyrrha cut off Ozpin when accepting her task with the maidens. Afterwards, we see Ozma's first reincarnation, now voiced by Ozpin's voice actor Shannon McCormick. And I'm so glad that the episode made a note that Oscar was watching Ozma's first soul bonding, getting to see firsthand how scared and confused he was, just like Ozpin told him he did in the past. I imagine this might make the farm boy feel a little bit more sympathetic towards his soul partner, after seeing the trials and tribulations he went through because of the curse. And after things have gotten a little bit edgy between those two after hijacking each other recently, this may go some way in making the two try to have a bit more of a united relationship together. We also get to see the world of Remnant post-destruction, a world completely alien to what Ozma knew, including a new race of people called the Faunus. So that's a curious little detail. The Faunus came after the destruction of the original world. They weren't always a thing, and we still don't even know what their origin actually is, though I have an inkling that it's got something to do with the gods having a beast form and a human form. Perhaps with humans now being fractions of the beings they used to be, maybe some of the gods' powers that initially created them live on as these animal features, just like aura and semblances could be remnants of the magic that humanity used to have. Heck, I wonder if this is actually the case, and Salem, seeing humans with animal features and thinking back to the gods, vented her anger towards this new race of people, and that would spark that initial hatred for the Faunus in other humans. These remnants of the old living on in the new world can also tie into the creation of dust. While its origins are also not explored, I'd hazard a guess that it's actually a mix of the lost magic and the pieces of the moon that fell to the planet. In time, Ozma would find himself drawn to the location of another person who could still use magic, revealed to be Salem as he suspected, and instantly, the two lovers recognize each other despite their new forms, happy to at last be reunited with each other. But while the two return to a happy life together, each keep secrets from the other, Salem hiding the truth of the world's destruction and blaming it on the gods in fear of Ozma's rejection, while Ozma is unsure of who's telling the truth and avoids disclosing his task and the relics. But even so, he still thinks about humanity needing to be living in harmony, should the gods ever get summoned back. And with the world currently divided and godless with no one to guide them, Salem suggests that they become this new world's gods. Ozma's love for Salem and her promise that they could actually shape a better world than the gods before them leads to Ozma accepting her idea, adding to another example of this episode's theme of the hearts of men being easily swayed. The two soon show their might to humanity after turning this Nevermore into a pretzel, and in time they gain a following, a kingdom, and even a family. Hot damn, Ozma and Salem got busy! And why yes, it is rather intriguing that the 4 daughters they have clothes matching the colours of the original seasonal maidens, though more on that in a bit. Oh look, a little Toto doll! Hashtag Zwei is still best doggo. Yet even with the two acting as this world's new gods, humanity is still at odds with each other, and Salem is not helping things at all by influencing the fighting, wanting their word to be spread across the world and death to anyone who would oppose it. Ozma, still feeling unsettled by the actions, soon realizes he's taken a wrong turn from what the God of Light asked of him, after his bonded soul snaps some sense into him on top of one of his daughters, showcasing her ability to use magic. So yeah, let's discuss this little tidbit for a moment. Ozma and Salem's daughters are without question an influencing element that would lead into the later creations of the seasonal maidens. They're not the same maidens though from the story that Ozma once told, however, as even with Ozma's current bad habit of lying and keeping secrets, there's a lot of that same story that doesn't connect to the current events in Ozma's life at this point in time, like him living alone, shutting off the world, and being initially distant to the maidens. I do however think that Ozma the Hermit would have unwittingly used the memories of his daughters being able to inspire him to give the maidens the magic, maybe even seeing them as what his kids could have been like if they didn't. Well, we'll get to that in a moment. But now that Ozma understands that he's failing in his task, he comes clean to Salem about everything the God of Light told him about his mission, the relics, and what will happen if the gods are summoned, hoping that they can change things at last and work better towards this mission. But to his dismay, Salem doesn't care about aiding humanity. She's now at the point where her powers, her role, and her daughters being able to use magic has led to Salem gaining a god complex, and she's decided that she will no longer try to use her power to redeem humanity. Instead, she'll replace humanity entirely with people like herself, Ozma, and their children, repopulating the world in her image of paradise at the cost of this current age of humanity. It's at this point that Ozma finally sees how lost his love truly is. The lonely girl in the tower that wanted freedom is now a vengeful woman who would kill the world if she continues her goals. So he attempts to leave that night for good with his children so Salem cannot use them for her schemes. Though sadly, Salem catches him in the act, and the two soon do battle. We don't actually see the fight itself, save for the reactions of RWBY and Weiss watching on, and the reflections amongst the lights of their magical blows, but it is still clear enough how intense and destructive this fight is as soon as the castle falls in the wake of the two's battle, and the Grimm start to zone in. The fight eventually ends with seemingly the deaths of the children in the crossfire, and a wounded Ozma trying to flee the immortal Salem, who comes back to life despite at one point being a puddle. As powerful as Ozma is, even he can't beat Salem with her eternal life, and Salem truly seals the deal of these two becoming adversaries for life as she coldly deals the final killing blow. It's a chilling end to this once happy story, and it's equal parts tragic yet exhilarating to watch these two's pure love crumble away bit by bit the more their own actions and the actions of the gods cause them endless amounts of suffering and pain. And it feels right how such powerful figures, the gods included, can make such human mistakes that can leave such a huge mark in the world around them. And again, while the fight that we see between Salem and Ozma is not actually fully shown, I still managed to understand the emotions held within, and I was able to clearly grasp the strength and chaos that was taking place, and I don't feel that I was missing out. We then span over Ozma's next lot of reincarnations following this defeat, starting off with a frail old man that I very much doubt is the Hermit, given that the next life is still drowning himself in sadness. But the reincarnation after that is the third of the figures that we've seen in the opening, of the Ozma the hero and Ozma the pseudo-god. This one being Ozma the Bernie Burns? At this point, Ozma has picked himself out of his sorrows, my guess being that he's already gone through the old hermit phase of his cycle, and he's now more willing to live his life, even connecting with the souls that he bonds with and showcasing that he can live in harmony with them, even if his soul partner does have a family. Which makes for a very promising sign that Ozpin could avoid absorbing Oscar and gaining full control of his body in the future. Perhaps as long as these two are united and they work in tandem, rather than one side overpowering the other. This version of Ozma is also the one that turns the scepter that he once used as the hero into the well-known cane that we later see him use as Ozpin, and he uses this as a weapon even during this form to ward off Salem's ever-present Grimm forces. In time, he does realize that his best bet to stop humanity from being divided and living in conflict is to destroy Salem. That way the world could possibly be able to come together without the fear of Grimm, and he can try to unite humanity without worrying about Salem summoning the gods. So, during another time when Ozma looks a bit more like the YouTuber Suede, he gains the Relic of Knowledge to ask Jin 3 questions. Where are the other relics? What powers do they have? And how can he destroy Salem? Sadly, we don't hear the answers to the first 2 questions, but we do hear Jin's response to how Ozma can destroy Salem, to which she says, "You can't." An answer that leaves Ozma and the RWBY girls watching all stunned. Well, that's a rather foreboding outcome, isn't it? But there are 2 avenues in how to take that response that can still make it seem less like a fruitless effort. See, genies in many tales can be extremely literal when answering the wish of their master. Like, say for instance, if I wish to be immortal, I could never die, but I could still age, because I didn't clarify that I wanted to stay my current age forever. It's a be careful what you wish for mentality, and Jin could have taken Ozma's question to mean either, is it possible to destroy Salem while she's immortal, or can Ozma specifically destroy Salem? Her response is still no, but the reality may not be as doom and gloom as it sounds. Maybe Salem can still be destroyed if she's no longer immortal, if someone else tried to destroy her instead of Ozma, or she can still be beaten without resulting in her death. It could very well be that there is still hope, despite how impossible Jin's response makes our hero's efforts look to be. Though on a different topic, this does give insight into why Ozpin would later go on to lock the relics away. If he believed that he is unable to destroy Salem, the next best thing would be to avoid the gods from ever returning, to possibly judge humanity. At least then, while he knows that the relics are safe and out of Salem's reach, he has more time to focus on finding a way to beat her. It's notable as well that out of all the girls watching this last sequence happen, Yang's response goes from shock to anger, while her teammates continue to look dejected. Maybe in Yang's mind, she's now starting to think that she's stuck on the losing side, facing an enemy that can't be beaten, and she's now on a suicide mission, thanks to Ozpin. Out of all of the responses to Jin's revelation about his secrets, I'm now very excited to see specifically Yang's reaction and how she confronts Ozpin about the matter. Could this lead to more conflict between her and the ex-headmaster? What might this mean for the team's chemistry if doubt and frustrations cause cracks within the group? We'll have to wait and see as the episode ends with a shot of a crestfallen Ozpin in Oscar's body, no doubt waiting just like us for the fallout of this crazy look into his disaster-filled past. Holy hell, was that episode a wild one. Like I referenced earlier, we got a lot more answers than I was expecting. Stuff like the Cracked Moon's origins, the Maiden's inspiration, and the relic's current form and true use were detailed alongside the much needed deeper look at Ozpin and Salem's history. Though thankfully, I never felt like the episode was bloated with too much information, and not all the mysteries and questions got clear-cut answers. There's still enough left behind for us watching to make our own guesswork on things like the origins of the Furnace or Dust, as well as the motivations of the God of Light and why he did in the end break the delicate balance that he was talking about and brought back Ozma. And the episode always made an effort to make sure that it's still tied to the story of Ozpin and Salem. They were never a forgotten element of this episode's narrative. At long last, we finally got some light shed on what tied these two figures together, why Salem hates Ozpin so much, what was the source of their conflict, and why Ozpin tried so hard to protect his secrets. And to me, it was not only a worthwhile bit of information that we got each time out, but it was also presented in a thoroughly entertaining way. The dynamic between these two is finally fleshed out, and Salem is now a much more interesting and layered character beyond just being the series' token bad guy. A tragic woman who was just as much a victim as she was the cause of her own downfall, as she never learned from her mistakes. Another one of this episode's central themes, as all the major players within made mistakes, and they each reacted to it in their own unique ways that pushed the story further along. instead blaming the gods and then eventually Ozma for the suffering that she went through, resulting in her becoming a dangerous entity that I now actively wish to see stopped. Ozpin, meanwhile, has finally had his current day shadiness opened up to where I can actually understand why he was so secretive. He is no doubt ashamed of letting Salem sway him into becoming a pseudo-god over the world, and that he was unable to stop Salem before she went off the deep end, and that his actions helped shape the current struggles that this world goes through night and day. He does live with regrets that he wishes to not let his allies see, perhaps out of fear that he would not be truly trusted by them, and his efforts to stop Salem would hit a major snag. He too feels more like a tragic person who did some wrongs, but compared to Salem, he at least snapped out of it and is trying to fix it. It doesn't, however, excuse some of his actions in the past or his present day actions, especially with his secret keeping, but it at least does give us enough of a foundation to best make a fair assessment of who Ozpin truly is, and why he does the things he does. Even the God Brothers feel more like characters now, instead of this disconnected factor in the world's origins and major conflict. They played their role just as vital as Salem and Ozpin did, and they too made horrible, conflicting moves to where you can say that they are just as much to blame for what happened as Salem and Ozpin. Each of these characters brought out new emotions from me related to them, and that's a hell of an achievement to praise this episode for, on top of all the lore that it revealed, and the new light that it shined on previous concepts that I thought I knew. And that's just one of the many ways that this episode has left an impact on the grand scheme of things, while still offering an engaging, emotional, and thought-provoking chapter to help it stand on its own merits. It's also a beautiful episode too, easily one of the best in the series. As I said before, the Domain of Light is probably my personal favourite new location seen here, but it's just one of the many striking and gorgeous settings that we get to visit. And the way that different people and locations change and appear from Jin's puffs of smoke really adds to the whole vibe that this is a fairy tale brought to life. The little details were also greatly implemented too, like the subtle expressions on the gods, the notable ways that they move, the lighting adding extra weight to the scene's tone, and man, was that soundtrack to this episode magnificent. The highlights for me being the epic and sometimes chilling chanting that accompanied the gods, and the use of Divide when Salem and Ozma became the new gods. Also, throughout this entire episode, the voice acting was sublime. Colleen did a masterful job narrating the events on screen while still having enough charm and energy to it so she didn't sound lifeless. And I give major props as well to both Chase and Brian for their performances as the God Brothers. Both had weight and power to them, but they also gave their roles that little extra special element to fit their respective god's personality. Chase giving his role a lot more comfort, yet still intimidating nature to his voice, and Brian finding the right balance between scary yet intelligent. Even the small parts from Aaron and Shannon added something more to the various forms of Ozma, but without question, the one most deserving of my voice acting gold star for the episode has to be Jen Taylor as Salem. Her character went through a real rollercoaster of emotions, and she managed to expertly capture each feeling and mindset that Salem went through, leading up to her more common twisted persona. So if it wasn't obvious by now, I truly love this episode. There's always a fear that with a info dump heavy episode like this, it might be too much exposition without any entertainment, especially with such a long episode too, and with a massive amount of hype leading into it. But for me to come out of this episode never once feeling let down, frustrated, or bored is truly worth high praise. I can see the hard work put in this episode top to bottom to not only make sure the narrative and the information discussed was engaging and insightful, but to also make it a goddamn stunning episode to watch. And I would definitely say that this was worth a lot of the build-up and anticipation. Tons of iconic moments and fantastically designed scenes, So many revelations, but more than enough to keep many of the mysteries still going, and every single major character left their mark and came out of this episode stronger and more interesting than before. In a volume that is already looking to be one of the best in the series and hitting some incredibly high marks, this episode could become one of the finest in the entire volume's lineup, and even the entire series. The stakes are now super high for our heroes, but so too is the volume's entertainment value. And after such a key episode, nailing every target that's asked of them, I'm steadily becoming more and more excited for how strong this volume could end up becoming. Bring on the fallout of this scene and everything else, because oh my god, this flat out outstanding work from the RWBY deserves to be enjoyed, and I really want to see some more. But of course, this is just my opinion, and I definitely want to see how you lot felt about this blockbuster chapter. Did this episode change your mind on how you view Salem and Ozpin? How do you feel about the many reveals and new mysteries explored? And what do you think will happen next? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and while you're at it, please hit the subscribe and bell buttons to make sure you get every new video from me as they drop, and follow me on Twitter for more on all things RWBY, as well as updates on future content and more. But until next time, have a good day or good night, and peace out.